All right, so this got posted yesterday. Let's just read through it. We feel it would be useful to let everyone know where we are in the development of Dragonflight classes and talent design. With the next beta and PTR build, so next week, the beginning of raid testing one, we're transitioning away from spending the majority of our time on the design iteration of the new talent trees. We are now primarily focused on fixing bugs and tuning the game. Before going onwards, this is something that I've been telling you guys was going to happen for weeks, that the whole bit of tuning, which a lot of people had mentioned as complaints, that has not even begun yet. And that's also a massive undertaking when you make something like the talent trees. And it's maybe just as important as that. But we knew this was coming. And especially with raid testing coming soon, it's very important that they have it. Now, a lot of people are just like, man, why does Blizzard, why are they doing raid testing now when, the classes just are not perfect? Like, the thing is, and they mentioned, in previous expansions, when you did beta raid testing, classes were more prepared and more complete. Well, of course they were, because they didn't just, uproot the entire design of all of these classes at once and then try to expect you to be able to play them at this point. There's nothing to compare them with. At Legion, WoD, BFA, Shadowlands beta, all of those betas, you could have basically left the game with no changes at all and done raid testing, and you would have seen a generally fine result, and you would have been able to play your characters. This is the most the game has changed from one expansion to another, maybe ever, in the modern days of WoW, certainly, to where it was kind of inevitable that something like this was going to happen. I think, obviously, it would feel better if, this is a couple weeks from now, but I think you're going to find out very soon. I think Blizzard is going to announce their expansion release date very soon, potentially within the next week. I think pre-patch is going to be not too long from now, and I think the expansion is going to be not too long from now. So, I think a lot of this post maybe wasn't even super premeditated. They were just all right, now's the time to announce it. I think they might have had a meeting yesterday and been yo, we've been shifting around ability left and right and up and down a row or whatever for a while, but we need to get our priorities straight. So, and basically much of this post is not them saying, we think we're done. I feel like that is the biggest thing that people have misunderstood about this post. And maybe I'll go into this more when I finish it. They're not saying we are done designing classes. We think we're done. They're saying this is now less important than making sure that all the stuff is tuned correctly. Not even just for raid testing, but for the actual build of the game. Because tuning has a lot to do with the design of these trees. Just literally pick any tree, right? And any spec. Currently, a lot of these buttons at the bottom, you're man, you're thinking of your builds and people are running numbers and shit. But realistically, some of this stuff is brought from previous expansions. Some of this stuff is new. Some of this stuff is old but reworked. And they have to go through and they have not done this at all. They have not even gone through the tuning process that would make this ability feel equal to this one, or everything on the bottom row feel like it's equal. And that alone helps the design of a ton of these trees, because right now you're man, this choice feels like shit. Well, maybe that choice feels like shit because this is insane. Again, this is rhetorical. I'm not using Master's Assassin as an example. And this isn't insane. Well, kind of their job is to make sure it is. And that could present a bunch of new fun builds. It could make a lot of builds that were previously bad and maybe fun really good. And again, a lot of these classes have been not redesigned, but really, really relooked at. And I think this is maybe not half of the process. I'd say probably the actual design of the trees and what you can see purely from a theoretical design standpoint is you're probably seeing 60% of what they want, but 40% is a big number, man. And they're just getting into that. And I think there's a lot of good things to come from it. I'm going to read the rest of this, though. This includes balancing talent choices against each other, like I was just talking about, and tuning the throughput of each class. We want to ensure that we release an expansion of the highest quality for this incredible community. That being said, the new talent system constitutes a tremendous change to the game and represents a fundamental overhaul to how classes and specs are customized by players. It is our expectation that we will be making adjustments based on your feedback throughout the expansion's lifetime. We greatly appreciate all of your testing and feedback thus far, and we're looking forward to delivering improvements to all the talent trees in content updates throughout Dragonflight. So again, this is pretty good, because they're basically saying yeah, we understand this is new, and we're going to be making changes all the time. I'll give you an example of where I think they're at with this. So let's look at Warrior, right? A class like Warrior that is largely pretty good to go. Warrior's trees are very good, right? But what is something I've been harping on for the last few weeks, right? The whole bit with Shockwave is at the bottom of the tree. And I've made a big stink of it, and people have paid attention to it, whatever. And I do disagree that this is here. However, first of all, I could be wrong. Second, this is now, like, they're at the point where there's so much other work they could be doing that if it's in someone's mind at Blizzard to keep shifting around Shockwave 1 or 2 positions, or making endurance training 1 point instead of 2 or whatever, or choosing to move this up in the tree, honestly, that is not that important. Here's why. Because I'm saying, and I think a lot of the Warrior community is saying, hey, I don't really want to take Shockwave and there's all these talents down here. Okay, take Season 1, and Blizzard's saying, bet. We think you will take Shockwave and Mythic Plus. Very possible. It's basically 2 points of quick thinking versus Shockwave. And if they don't and people hate it, this is the exact kind of thing that they could easily fix in a 0.1 patch. And they'll actually have data and players playing the game to kind of give that feedback. Because to be honest with you, a Warrior player playing their very good trees, by the way, like they have issues like every tree, but like they got a lot of really fucking good shit going on, for sure. No one's going to quit the game, honestly, because Shockwave is down here. They're not. Like, I won't speak about PvP at all. Like, PvE, they're not, man. Like, and also, it could be wrong. Like, people will take Shockwave and lose a little throughput and not care. But, like, that's, like, the small stuff that they definitely can't just be, like, occupying their mind during this. And I just kind of want to talk about this post being made in general. One thing that these talent trees have taught me, and this is the only reason this kind of depressed me yesterday, is because Blizzard is actually fucking owning. Seriously, I think overall, a lot of people will look at this very biased towards their one class. There's like something you don't like, or like something they posted that like, you know, didn't make you happy. But like for someone who's been basically spending the last 2 months being very closely paying attention to all of the changes they're making in every class and why, I think overall they're doing an amazing job. And the only reason it depressed me yesterday is because over time, every class was starting to make the right decisions. And now, I knew this post was coming. I completely agree with them doing it. The reason it feels bad at all is because the devs have been doing such a good job, they just ran out of time that had something that was nothing to do with them. It's because they're trying to release this expansion at the end of this year. And I know from watching it that like maybe 3 or 4 weeks more of the same stuff they've been doing for the last month and a half would have every single one of these trees like in the S tier. That's how good they're doing at this. And I think the developers know it too, right? You guys think that like that? I think that's like the difference of like understanding what they're saying. They're not saying, hey, we as devs think the design for this is in a perfect spot. We think this is in a great spot. You like people like Priest kind of got halfway through, whatever. Like we think you're good. They're not really saying that. They're just saying like our priorities have to change right now, and they're right. But if you're one of those classes, you're going to kind of feel bad and be uneasy and hope it gets figured out. And I think some of those classes will be one of the first people to get looked at before the expansion comes out if they get tuning done. You know, I just feel bad for the devs because I think for someone who's paid very close attention to it, I think they've done a fantastic job at this. Like so good. Better than any of my expectations, truly. And I just wish they had 3 more weeks to kind of iron it out before they moved on to tuning, because I feel like it just would have improved the quality of it, of all of it. That being said, a lot of the class trees that exist right now, I think are going to get way better just from the tuning phase alone. Also, this doesn't mean it's the end of changes. A brand new Moonkin tree is getting released next week. I looked at this the other day. I understand that like there's like recency bias and stuff like that, and I don't currently play Moonkin, and I watched a Moonkin look over the trees, but again, I think I have a pretty good idea of what makes a lot of the trees in this game good. That Moonkin spec tree might be the single best spec tree in the game. The choice looks great. The actual things you get look great. The potential power level, all of it. It looks banger as fuck. It looks insane. I cannot wait till it comes out next week. And I think that's one of the last major things they're going to do. The last thing I think they're going to do is, I don't know if they're going to fully redo the Druid class tree, even after this post. I think this has already been in the works because they talked about doing this a while ago. At the very least, I think 3-point nodes are gone from this tree, and they'll rework fur. But I think it also could just be like next week, you're also going to see a Druid tree post. But other than that, I think classes are largely fine. And just to use Warriors as an example, as much as I've been making a stink about it just because I want things to be perfect, you know, I think the whole like bit about Shockwave being up or down, I think it's okay that it goes live like this. Seriously, I don't think it's going to be that impactful for that season, and I think they'll have the information to go off it to make major 9.1 changes. And this kind of just brings me to what the patch content of this expansion will be. And this is something I wanted to ask Ian. I basically got, when I like sent my questions to Ian so he could get more info on them and give me the best answers. One of the things he told me about this specific question was like, I can't really talk about what our patch content is going to be, which totally makes sense. Basically, the question was this. You know, there's a bunch of eras in this game. One of the ones we were just in was the Borrowed Power era. From Legion to Shadowlands. The exact same kind of idea. Every patch, every expansion, you knew what to expect. And it was like artifact power, Azerite power, you know, losing all this shit at the beginning of the expansion, spending a year of the expansion to figure it out, whatever. Okay, clearly Dragonflight is just fundamentally like almost the opposite of that, but if not the opposite, just very, very different. And in a way, you don't really know what's coming with patches. I imagine there'll be some kind of Korthia-like thing, or Zereth Mortis, or, you know, Timeless Isle. Like, there'll be like an island thing. I think they're going to release much more unique Dragonflight dungeons throughout the expansion. In fact, I'm positive that's true. He said as much. But other than that, like, what are you looking forward to that's coming out in a patch? Maybe it's an opportunity for them to release a lot more horizontal content. With them not having to release essences or corruption or Azerite armor or covenants and balancing that, they spent the entire expansion balancing covenant shit. Like, soulbinds. I think this is like something, this last paragraph is something that shouldn't be overlooked. I think a large amount of what these same people who are designing these classes now and have gotten all the feedback in the world will not only have that feedback, but they'll have new feedback, and they'll have a bunch of playtest numbers and actual choices of what people are taking to look at, and they'll be able to, you know, balance the trees better. And I think a large portion of what they do going into a new patch will be looking at how these trees are.